Loving you is my problem. I'm singing to you tune, hoping that you can follow the sound waves. 'Cause I'm already...
Are we live? Hey, so happy Tuesday. Yesterday was really fun. Sorry, I'm sitting here stirring my coffee, having a little coffee. But yesterday was a lot of fun. We had Matt Wallace on and Jake Lang and Bahizzi. And, you know, what's exciting about yesterday is that we just like let it all hang out. Oh, and Sam Anthony. We had Sam Anthony on too. You know, Apollo, we got to get Sam Anthony back on at some point because I feel like we brought him in the middle of chaos. He enjoyed it, but we didn't get to speak a whole lot about what some of the cool things that he's doing.
I talked to him today, actually. He's a really cool guy.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. I mean, Sam is a really, really, really cool guy. So just so you guys all know, today we're going to have a guest on, Canncon, Brian Lupo. He's a Marine, combat vet. He's a writer at Gateway Pundit. He's also a podcaster. Pretty cool guy. I mean, he's done some pretty amazing things. He works with Ash Epp and a few others. If you remember, Ash Epp worked with us over here at Frank's Beach for a little bit, and is a prolific writer in her own right. But let's just get into it. We're going to talk today about Judge James Boasberg's corrupt history and his daughter. We're going to deep dive into it. We're going to do that with Canncon. I think you'll really enjoy it. And then President Trump, just a couple other things we want to talk about. President Trump announced today that the JFK files would finally be released to the public. There's nearly 80,000 pages of classified information that's reached the hands of the American people. It's long overdue. I'm going to have a little bit of fun digging through that. I read the Warren report so long ago, and every time I read it, I was like, this is not real. This is not the way, this isn't the right information. And it turns out I was right. But as we, you know, we have this thirst, and in that thirst, we want more, right? We want to get more access to more information. We want the government to stop treating us like slaves, like they do every day. And then we have to ask the question about the Epstein files. It's a debacle. And the Epstein files, what makes it interesting is that it's not the president of the United States who was assassinated some 60 years ago. We're talking about a private citizen who indulged in debauchery and did so with prominent people all over the country and took them to an island and abused women and abused children. And yet 16 years later, we're still being told we can't see it, and no one has been arrested. And so we got to ask the question, is any substantive information going to be released, and why are they holding on to it? Which then leads you down this pathway where you have to ask the question of whether or not we are living in a country that we only get to see about 2% of. And then the 98% of the rot we just can't see. But then we're going to get through, we're going to discuss stuff with Canncon, and that's going to be this judge. This judge is no stranger to corruption, and the things that him and his family are wrapped up in are shocking. From surveilling Trump to what his daughter's working to assist gang members with evading deportation. We've got to get to the bottom of what I think is the biggest institutional rot that we face as a nation, and that is the judiciary. It's really bad. So we're going to do this. We're going to talk about all of this stuff and more today on Untamed. Untamed is going to be untamed. It's going to be a little crazy. I want to talk to my people. I want to talk to my brothers and sisters. We can have grace and humility in how we interact with other people.
Oh, hot dog, look at you.
And nobody talked about what's really happening. And let's have conversations about what truth is. Well, you know, we've had this conversation over and over again about, you know, the different types of files and the classified files that you have in the government. And, you know, today I was having a conversation with a few gentlemen, and we were talking about how do we work the problem in the urban streets? How do we reach the gang members inside of the desert environments that have been created? So opportunity deserts, food deserts, and education deserts in inner cities. And Gerard and Sayaka, and by the way, Sayaka was a J6er. He was pardoned. And so I was on the phone trying to figure out how we could do these urban town halls, like have a town hall. How do we work the problem? And two amazing men that I was only supposed to be on the phone with them for 45 minutes. I ended up being on the phone with them for an hour and a half. And we're going through a bunch of things, and we started talking about slavery. And as you have the conversation about slavery, it starts getting to where, you know, what constitutes slavery, and why would I say that we are slaves? Well, it turns out they felt the same way that I did. And as we started talking about, you know what the formula was, like how do we create a tactical map that meets the objectives that we have in society to stop this institutional rot. And until you solve the problem, if you service the symptoms, you're always going to have the problem. And so as we dig deeper right now, as we sit here and talk about it, one of the things President Trump is trying to do, I believe, is just lift back the curtain so much that it becomes obvious who our enemy is in this country. And so yesterday, President Trump made an announcement that all JFK files will be released, and he asked that they not be redacted. And there's over 80,000 files. So let's go hear it straight from 47 himself.
But while we're here, I thought it would be appropriate. We are tomorrow announcing and giving all of the Kennedy files. So people have been waiting for decades for this. And I've instructed my people that are responsible, lots of different people, put together by Tulsi Gabbard, and that's going to be released tomorrow. We have a tremendous amount of paper. You've got a lot of reading. I don't believe we're going to redact anything. I said, just don't redact. You can't redact. But we're going to be releasing the JFK files, and that would be tomorrow. Do you have anything else to add to that, Carolyn? So that's a big announcement. They've been waiting for that for decades. Then I said during the campaign I'd do it, and I'm a man of my word. So tomorrow you have the JFK files. What time will they be released?
Tomorrow afternoon.
Tomorrow afternoon, okay.
Have you seen what's in the files? Have you read them?
I've heard about them.
Was there,
Anything interesting?
It's going to be very interesting.
was there an executive summary supplied to you, Mr. President?
No, I'm not doing summaries. You'll write your own summaries. It's many pages. Is it 80,000 pages? Approximately 80,000 pages. So it's a lot of stuff. And you'll make your own determination.
So years ago, man, it's been so long. 30 years ago, I read the Warren Commission report. So Warren report was all the findings of JFK's assassination. And as you read through it, it's a thick book. I mean, it's a really thick book. This is back before the internet. You know, there was no internet when so you had to read this small print document. And I read the entire thing, and I was fascinated by it. And you'd go, well, why? Well, because they had documents in there. There's a thing that we talk about when we say that, hey, chaos favors the op, doesn't favor the people. And the reality of it is that's so true. And you can see it in court cases today. The piece of shit, Charles Kane, who's Coomer's attorney, who has created chaos in the market. So, deleted all the things related to Coomer, was able to do things that only the CIA could possibly do in redacting and pulling information and creating these ops to make him seem like everything's good. And there was people inside of the government that were like, oh, I've heard this recording. That was to sow doubt in that there was a recording. That I never said there was a recording. So to sow doubt in so they could create these openings to run these ops. And the same thing we said for the Warren Commission report. It's, I think it's 1,400 pages, 1,500 pages. I don't remember. It was a big book. It was like watching paint dry in certain areas. But President Johnson, who I'm not very fond of either, and I believe was, as you read the report, one of the things that I concluded, and I was actually not allowed to write it in my final paper, was that he was responsible, that he knew who had assassinated JFK, and that he was a part of it. And everyone thought I was a kook back then, but I kept referring back to parts of the Warren report that had these huge gaps. Like, they didn't make any sense. Like, why are we talking about Lee Harvey Oswald's, teen years, right? It's just stuff that leads you down a rabbit hole inside of a report. The report is supposed to be substantive to the assassination of JFK, and it wasn't. It wasn't substantive to it. So, I've read the Warren report, the Warren Commission report. I think it was the Warren report, but I've read it, and so I'm going to be interested to see if these 80,000 pages correlate with what was in the report, or is it completely different? And most people haven't read the Warren report, but President Trump has promised us a long time ago that we would have some transparency. And he's been talking about the JFK files for a long time. Why would they be classified? And what can we learn about them that'll tell us a little bit about the apparatus of our government? But he's been talking about it for a long time. Here's him way back in, I think it was June of last year. He was talking about it. Let's go ahead and play it.
Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
I
did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
Attorney General.
Yeah, I would. He's very serious about declassifying it. And you have to ask yourself why. Like, what's the purpose behind it? What can we gain, or what can we get from it? So this is the press secretary teasing that there'll be major revelations that come with the release of the JFK files. Let's go ahead and play it.
The American people will have their hands on these documents, and there will be a story to tell. I won't preview that story, but let me tell you, the American people are truly going to be shocked at what they see.
What makes me mad about that is that we were told that people had walking out of the White House, and you had some pretty good guys. I mean, DC Drano was walking out, and he had this file folder. And I don't believe that a lot of these guys really recognize what was already released in 2007, what was released accidentally in 2010 and 2012, and that you could readily get available these files on the FBI website. But there was a debacle that happened there, and then it was like a nothing burger. And this, is it going to be much of the same, or is it going to be something different? And here, Canncon is talking about, he had this post, which I think is amazing. And this post says, here's to hoping we don't get the hose again. And it has that's actually DC Drano that's holding up this thing that says JFK files with a bunch of people in the background. So I hope not. I do hope not that it's not. I don't think it's going to be. But then again, there's a lot of things that I've thought about there being that would or would not be. Is Canncon on? A little time? All right. So I get to free ball it for about 11 minutes because I think he gets on in about 11 minutes. I want to talk about some of the people that have been contacting me to run for office, that say run for office. And I've contemplated running for the governor of Colorado. And people are like, well, why would you run? And, we one of the reasons why we changed the name from Conservative Daily to Untamed Nation and Joe Untamed is because, I've been talking about, how are you truthful with people and get them to bite that truth and but also recognize that, you can't be in an echo chamber just talking to a bunch of conservatives. And in my life, I don't live my life that way. And so we changed the name, right? We went to Untamed Joe. Do you ever notice that every time you talk to a politician, they talk the same way? Paul, did you ever notice that? They all say the same thing. We want to make things better, and we're going to do this, and we're going to fix the problem, and we're going to go to Washington, and we're going to fix it. Here's the reality. They never fix anything. They don't. I mean, how many times have they said the same thing over and over again? We're going to fix, we're going to fix, we're going to fix, we're going to fix. And we've been hanging on to this hope. And then President Trump comes in and he says, you know what? I know how to turn this thing upside down. I'm going to Doge everything. I'm going to bring in Elon Musk, who, took a faltering, Twitter and said, I'm going to buy it. Spent $44 billion on something that's probably worth a fraction of that. And he cut out 70% of Twitter's people. And the thing that he said is that if you don't feel it after you cut deep, you didn't go deep enough. And I truly believe that. And so you have to look at the government from the standpoint of, it's been getting away with murdering, raping, and enslaving the American people for a long time. And that's not a hyperbolic statement. And when you have USAID doing what they're doing, and that President Trump can come in one day, comes in on January 20th, and on the 21st, he sends the military down to the border, and he's like, enough is enough. And it drops by 96%. He didn't need Congress. He didn't need anyone. Turns out he just needed accountability. And it's really hard to look at that and not go, man, something is really wrong. Something is really wrong in our country where the government can kill American people. And that's what happened. Like, Americans were raped, murdered, robbed, terrorized by people coming across the border that didn't belong here. And you could say, Joe, the justification out there is that we should have, open borders and there shouldn't be borders. You're a retard if you think that. You're a demonic retard. See, the reason why you have borders is to check and balance what comes in and what goes out. And when fentanyl is killing 25,000 or so kids a month, you have to re-examine what's wrong with your brain. When you're standing up and fighting for the gangs, violent gangs that are murdering people in the streets, and you're a judge and you're saying, hey, we need to stop you from this is inhumane. When you're Brian Krappenstein or Ed Krappenstein, those terroristic little midgets down in Florida, who, by the way, just so everyone understands, the Krappensteins brothers, the Krassensteins, they were under FBI investigation, had to forfeit their house and about $500,000 in cash because they were stealing money from grandmothers. That's who the Krappenstein brothers are. And so they get on there as they're the moral authority, and they talk about this much like the Brooklyn dad does, that piece of trash, and get out there and say, you're just deporting people because you're a racist. No, we're deporting people because they're criminals. And we're going to send them down there. And frankly, I feel really bad, not even a little bit, at what they're going to do with them, because frankly, I don't think they're going to have a very good life down there in South America. But we look at what President Trump's been able to do, and then you look at the doging of the government, and not much has changed, but it has. Like, I have friends that are in government contracting and things like that, and they're like, yeah, we're on a total hiring freeze. We have no idea how low these cuts are going to come. And that's a good sign, because what that means is that they recognize that they've been stealing from the American people for a long time, and the gig is up. Now, is President Trump going to be able to do that with some of the institutional rot we have in the judges? And you have to go back in time, way back in time, when the ink was dry on the Constitution, and we started basically the federalization of certain aspects of what was in the Constitution, and then left things to the states, and where that led. And this whole idea of judges being corrupt is not a new idea. It's just been getting worse and worse. The boiling of the frog has gotten worse from over the last 60, 70 years. And they have taken things that normally that they wouldn't be able to take, but they've taken them from us, from the American people. And it's the same thing if you trace back property tax. Property tax was not always there. Matter of fact, it was a new phenomenon some 50, 60 years ago. And it started off as a very modest tax. We wanted to handle, it was $200, $500. And it wasn't a year. It's like having a homeowners association, right? Which we all know we love those. And so as we go through this process, we start seeing that the government is taking more meat off the bone. And so I threatened to run for governor. And here's the platform that I wanted to run on. It's super simple. Get rid of property tax for everybody. You shouldn't have to rent your property from the government. You shouldn't. The government owns 100% of the property in this country. Even if you say you have a deed to the property, at any point, they can go to a rotted apparatus called the judiciary, and they can take your property from you. A judge sitting in a black robe who acts and loves the idea that they get to inflict pain. That's why you have a high deviancy rate in judges, because they're deviants. That's why you have them getting caught, like the one in Utah, the judge in Utah with the fire chief. They got caught piddling kids and communicating with each other and even helping each other, talking about how they're going to fantasize to hurt children, right? Sexually hurt children. That was a judge in Utah and the fire chief in Utah. And so as I started saying I'd run for office, I didn't want to run for office. But we need people to run for office who don't speak the same language. We need people to say, I shouldn't have to pay a toll to go on a highway. I shouldn't have to pay a toll to drive on a road. I shouldn't have privatized or public pensions that say on the private sector, there's no parity, because on the private sector, you have to fund your own retirement. And on the public sector, we get to give you free cash. And oh, by the way, we're going to have this loophole that says if you work an extra 2 or 3 years and you only made $100,000 a year and you work 3 years here and 3 years here, now we're going to pay you $300,000 in pensions. There shouldn't be loopholes that allow for people to take advantage of the system. And part of that is tied to unions. So we need people to run for office that basically say we're going to doge the governments at every level. Because I believe the more I look into budgets, we could cut our state budgets by 50 to 60%, you'd never feel it. Currently, there's 1 in 10 people are employees of the government. That means out of every 10 people, you have 1 government employee that literally is overseeing you. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that call. Anyway, so I've been talking to people that are thinking about running for office, and if you're listening to this and you're thinking about running for office, it's really simple. No, thank you. Thank you. If you run for office and you talk to the people about what's hurting them, which I'm going to talk to Brian about because we're going to get through this judge specifically, and you go to the poorest communities, their biggest problem is droughts, opportunity droughts, education droughts, food droughts, or deserts, as you want to call it, school to prison pipelines. And it looks like this inner circle. So you have red, yellow, green. You get out to the suburbs, it's green. And yet all the Democrats in the inner cities are talking about that it's Trump. Trump is the problem. Well, the problem is the person that's actually in power inside of that institution of government inside the inner city. So if we can get people, I think people are past the Democrat and Republican side. I think they just want people that are going to stand up for them and treat them like humans, not like slaves. And right now we live in a country that is a slave state. You're a slave. And what makes it very difficult for people to get up every day and to make a decision to elect another politician is they're told you had to have decorum. And I think that's the misnomer. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Brian Lupo. I get to talk to you for a few minutes before he got on. Again, Brian works for Gateway Pundit. He's a Marine. He's a combat veteran. Probably one of the smartest guys out there and does an immense amount of research. So we're going to talk to him and work the problem with this judge, this terrible judge, and the family dynamics of which does remind you of what it is. That's organized crime. We'll be right back. Are you looking for monthly income without risks of stocks? Here's something you won't hear on CNBC. There's a unique way to collect royalties directly from America's most productive oil fields. No exploring, no drilling, no operating headaches. You simply collect checks month after month. The best part? You can get started with just $25 through any brokerage account. The Oxford Club Chief Income Strategist, Mark Lichtenfeld, breaks down what he believes is the #1 oil royalty plan for 2025. Visit oilboom2025.com now to learn more. That's oilboom2025.com. Stop buying oil stocks and start collecting oil royalty checks instead.
Hi, I'm Joe, Supreme Leader of DCF Guns. What is DCF Guns, you ask? We're the best damn gun store and range in the universe. Do we have guns? We have all the guns. We got small guns. We got big guns. We even have beastly guns. We offer all types of training, and we have 5 ranges across our 3 locations. I'm a good shot. And of course, we have all types of ammo. We even have flamethrowers. Woo! We offer incredible membership opportunities, and members save even more on guns, ammo, and accessories. Military, both active and retired, and first responders get up to 40% off memberships. Come join the DCF family today, where we keep the range hot and the deals hotter. It's hot.
In every thread, in every stitch, Honor-Bound USA weaves the fabric of the American spirit. It's not just apparel, it's a testament to God, family, and country. At Honor-Bound USA, we're a family of patriots who put our faith, family, and America first. When you visit our website, you'll find a line of products that embody our commitment to pray, stand, speak, and act. As the official site for the Untamed podcast, all of our products proclaim speaking the truth with courage. We also have the powerful documentary from Professor David Clements, Let My People Go. Identify yourself as one of the few who are willing to stand for what they believe in. Join the Honor-Bound USA family today. Wear it as a badge of honor, commitment to the values that shape us, and a pledge to the bright future we will build together. Because when you're honor-bound, you're not just wearing a brand, you're embodying a lifestyle. All right, welcome back. I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time. While we were in the break, I got to talk to Brian Lupo, aka Canncon, about the ruling that just came down for USAID. So, Apollo, I put that up there. Brian, welcome to the show, brother.
You guys.
Yeah, it's been a bit.
I know.
We've been doing a lot of great things, though. We renamed Conservative Daily to Untamed Nation. We're going to be launching more and more people. We have Wayne Allen Root on. We have a new platform that'll launch. I hope to get it out by the middle of this month, but it looks like it's going to be the end of the month. It'll allow people to create their own content, become citizen journalists, kind of replace a platform that gives them the ability. It'll also aggregate content from different social sites and things like that. So it's going to be pretty cool.
Very cool. Congratulations.
Yeah. So what have you been up to other than just kind of lighting the world on fire?
Well, right now I'm working on a series on the 2024 election in Georgia. So we've had Phil Davis, Mad Liberals, on our program for the last probably 6 or 7 episodes, going over all the stuff that he found going back to 2020. And we just last week tapped into 2024, and holy crap, man. Georgia is just the most corrupt state that I could possibly imagine. Just insane how corrupt it is.
Well, you know, it's corrupt, but I mean, Brian, I was talking to you about this before you actually came on, and that is the institutional rot that allows for all of these agencies and people to do what they're doing right now, and that no one has ever brought to justice. And we're now, you know, roughly 60 days into President Trump's term, and I know people are really frustrated that there isn't been putting people in cuffs, and we see what's happening with the DOJ and the debacle with the Epstein files. And you put up that post that says, I hope we're not going to get another one of those, right? Epstein files. Brian, there's a problem. There's an issue that we have. We have institutionally lost trust because we are the only ones held accountable. Tina Peters rots in jail 9.5 years for a nonviolent crime that she didn't commit, while the judge took away their ability. And here we are having a conversation about which I want to talk about, which is USAID and what these judges are doing, and we don't ever get to the bottom. There's no confidence. We don't have confidence in these people because it's the them versus us.
Yeah, so the USAID ruling that just came down. So I've been really, I know we're not getting the handcuffs yet. We're not getting the perp walks and everything else just yet. But overall, Joe, I'm still pretty excited about a lot of the things that are taking place here. I heard, I was listening before the show started, or while I was in the green room, talking about people at the local level being to get involved in running for office. And I look at the stuff that's been coming down on Act Blue, obviously the USAID defunding, even though I hope Trump doesn't abide by that order from this judge. This is stuff, Joe, that's going to make it possible for the grassroots candidates to start injecting themselves into politics, both at the local level, the state level, and the federal level. I know you've interviewed tons of people that are running grassroots campaigns to try and win office. And what's the number one thing that we always hear from these people? They don't have the funding, right? They're always saying, I can't compete with this guy. He raised $10 million. He raised $6 million. He raised $30 million, and you can't compete with that. But when you take out the Act Blue, you take out, hopefully Win Red is next on the chopping block. But when you take out that fund that is literally our taxpayer funds being laundered back to the campaigns of the chosen individuals, I think that's really going to open up opportunity for local, grassroots people to get involved in politics. I'm excited about that. Okay,
so I am too. And I was serious about running for governor. My wife, I'm literally having conversations with her down here in Texas, and both my kids are like, "Please, Dad, don't do it." I mean, you're look at what's happening when you get back involved in business, and it's just let's keep your focus there. But we need candidates that talk about the problems and don't try to service the symptoms or try to tell us that look over there, look over there, look over there. And in large part, that's what politics have been for so long. We're conditioned to it. And so you have this doging. I do want to bring this up really quick. This is the ruling that came down. Can you put that up by any chance, Apollo? This is the actual ruling on USAID. Where is it? Yeah. Yeah, can we put that article up? No, yes.
I can see it.
Oh, geez. Okay. But this article, as you were saying, Brian, this is basically saying that the efforts to close USAID, likely unconstitutional agency, must be restored. Judge rules. This is an Obama judge from the Greenbelt, from Maryland, from the Beltway, and he goes on to say he must reinstate the U.S. Agency for International Development Systems on Tuesday. Ruling the accelerated shutdown of the agency led by Elon Musk likely violated the United States Constitution in multiple ways. So I just want to stop there for a minute. Brian, when in the world was an agency of the United States actually covered under the Constitution? Can you tell me of any?
I can't name one. I cannot name a single one. The idea that, USAID, which we all know is a CIA front for the dirty work that the CIA themselves can't do, propagandizing foreign countries, running coups d'etats, et cetera. That all deals with foreign policy. That is, almost explicitly delegated to the second Article 2 of the Constitution to the president. And the idea that a judge can jump in here and interfere with that is absurd to me. And, again, like I was saying earlier, I hope this is one of the orders that that President Trump doesn't listen to. ignore this. Don't give them back the funding. Don't give them back their office space. It's absolutely absurd that they're cutting him off at his knees and trying to, stop him from being able to enact any of his policy. And I'm avidly against this.
Brian, they're just throwing out common sense. We have to cater to the ridiculous almost every day. And what you just said about being the CIA, I was in the Middle East and Africa. I saw USAID. I saw the fact that there were CIA people that were everywhere. It was unbelievable what these people were able to do. And it leads back to, by the way, that CIA leads back to institutions, education institutions like Columbia University, Jeffrey Sachs, who I went to send a text to Tucker Carlson, and I stopped and said, he's interviewed Jeffrey Sachs way too many times. He either knows or, I'd just be pissing off the bear if I sent this text. But here's a guy at Columbia University it's almost undeniable. He's either CIA or he's probably the worst human being on the planet that has bilked American taxpayers out of billions of dollars and lied about solving poverty in Africa. And so how do we get to the bottom of this when you have the judiciary that's saying it's unconstitutional, but there's no constitutional I can't find any constitutional basis behind it. And then on the other side, you have people inside the government that it's like you have the captain of the ship, which is Trump, and you have this entire mutiny behind you, self-interested mutiny behind you that are literally trying to do everything they can to sabotage you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had the judge that ruled, the probationary employees have to be sent back to work, which is, again, absurd. There's absolutely no the president, as the executor, can fire probationary employees with absolutely no justification. They don't need to give a reason for it. Just, it's not working out. Goodbye. Your position is no longer needed. But now they're forcing these people to come back. And you're exactly right. I actually think it was either Data Republicans or Elon Musk that had initially said, this is like a captain on a ship. And right now he's dealing with a mutiny. And because he doesn't have his people in place yet, and they're still trying to weed out the people that are going to be loyal to his agenda, that are going to implement his agenda. And we don't have that right now. And so you see the deep state, I mean, they're a caged animal at this point. When they cut off that USAID funding, when they cut funding for National Endowment for Democracy, when he cut the Inter-Africa development funds, these are massive programs that were run by our intelligence community in order to, insert their own political aspirations into these different countries. You look at Ukraine and what happened during the Maidan, going out there, almost 90% of Ukrainian media right now is funded by the United States through Internews, which is USAID funded. And there's another one. The acronym is MBU. I can't remember what it stands for. But those two entities right there are USAID funded to the tune of millions of dollars. And they are propaganda machines for the Western regime, the European Union, the United States, to insert their influence in these countries. And if President Trump can't stop that and allow these countries to regain their own sovereignty and make their own decisions, then again, you got to ignore these orders. You cannot abide by a judge who is citing something apparently in the Constitution. He doesn't cite anything specifically, but these are rogue judges that understand the implications of what's going to happen if Trump's policy actually stands up, and it's going to result in a non-imperialistic America that we actually have a chance to grow as a globe.
You're right. And not only are you right, but when we start talking about the mutiny that's happening and these decisions being made by these judges, Brian, it does actually tell us something else. And that is, where's the point of accountability? How do you hold a judge accountable? How is it that a district court judge has the ability to tell the president of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, what to do? Like, oh, you can do this as a CEO and change things, but you can't do this. And before you answer that question, let me ask you this question. The marshal services that service the justices that work inside of the courtroom, they're the ones that actually enforce the rules. Couldn't President Trump just pull back on the marshals and say you no longer will actually serve those judges?
Well, I mean, technically, the marshals is the enforcement arm of the judiciary. So that would
no, it's the executive. The marshals work for the executive branch.
Right, but they're supposed to be the enforcement arm of the judiciary. So yeah, that's a great point. I don't know exactly how that would work. I mean, you have, and again, this is what I was telling you beforehand. We have a case in, I think it was 2022, Utah versus United States, and in that case, I believe it was Justice Thomas that opined about there it is. If you want to pull up, you can read some of the arguments that I highlighted. But essentially what they were saying is that when a state, and that's what we're seeing right now, is all of these lawsuits are being brought by states attorneys generals in conjunction with some of these lawfare NGOs, that we've seen waging lawfare for the last 6 years, and even longer than that. But essentially what they're saying is that when a state sues the federal government, the court of original jurisdiction is the Supreme Court. Now, it's not exclusive to the Supreme Court. However, it should be the Supreme Court. And the reason for that is because it's such a serious thing when you have a state that is challenging the legitimacy of the executive branch or any branch of the federal government. It could be the legislature. And in Utah versus the United States, they're saying that you need a whole panel of the top of the top, right? The Supreme Court justices to make these decisions. But, to be honest with you, Joe, even the Supreme Court itself has gone a little bit by the wayside and become completely and totally politicized. So, I mean, while with a 5-4 majority, we would probably get favorable decisions, we would think. That's not a guarantee either. But look, going back to what you said, what is the constitutional grounds that says the president cannot pull back funding and shut down a branch under the executive?
Well, it doesn't exist. There's nothing that says that at all. And that's why we look at I call it the sidewalks that are built. They distract you over here, you turn around, they look like the sidewalks have been in forever. They've been making bad decisions and bad rulings for so long. I mean, look, we have cases that are out there right now, such as the Chevron case. That says that a lot of these agencies are absolutely unconstitutional. That was actually passed. Not one agency closed, not one person changed the direction of what they do. They just wait to be sued again and then to use that and rely on that case in order to actually lose that case. But that'll take 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So they've learned the game. They've learned that there's no accountability. They've learned that the judges can get away with whatever they want. They've learned that they can victimize the people and act with impunity. They've learned all these things. And I mean, Brian, tell me how the Second Amendment is negotiable. And yet in some states, you don't have parity. You have more rights as a citizen in Florida than you do when you're in New York or California or Colorado. And the Constitution was set the way it was so that everyone had parity. So no matter what state you were in, you were guaranteed certain protections. They were natural law protections. That's why you have the Constitution. And yet we don't have that parity. We don't have that equalization inside of our government. And these people have gotten away with a lot of things. But now we have to ask ourselves the question, Brian, now that we're here, how do you claw back from it? How do you claw back from this and hold these judges accountable when they are deeply entrenched in this ideological battle? I mean, it almost feels like we're heating up again. And we thought we were going to not heat up.
Well, again, what is the enforcement arm of the judiciary, right? They're supposed to interpret law, give their opinion on their interpretation of the law, give their opinion, and pass it down. So where is what is the legal recourse that the courts can take if President Trump says, no, I'm not giving USAID their funding back, or no, I'm not giving these people their jobs back? What are they going to do? Call the marshals, like you said, and arrest the president? Are they going to call the FBI to arrest the president? That's a really good question. And I think that this is something we're going to see that is going to kind of constrain the authority and the power of the judiciary. A bunch of people that are political appointees, essentially. I mean, I know they're not supposed to be political, but they're appointed by a president who is a political nominee, wins an election. And so, at some point, there has to be a challenge here to say, what is the legitimacy of some of these decisions? Why are we seeing like the Judge Boasberg? This guy has a massive conflicts of interest throughout his entire family, specifically relating to the rulings that he's making right now on these cases. The Alien Enemy Act case, Laura Loomer put out a thread about this. Bad Kitty Unleashed put out a thread about this. These are massive conflicts.
I'm gonna show you some of this stuff, which is and just so everyone understands, this judge Boasberg, he wanted to stop. Oh my gosh, I don't even know if you saw it. There's so much about this that I want. The Krappenstein brothers, they put out a thing saying that it violates human rights to push these criminals to out of the country, deport them. They came up with that. Apollo, find that for me.
I mean, those are very, very low IQ individuals. So,
well, these are the guys that basically were stealing from grandmas that had to forfeit a home and $500,000 in cash, and now they come out as the moral authority for the gang members. So it makes sense that they would actually be for gang members. But go ahead. Sorry.
Are you aware of Boasberg's involvement in the FISA courts and what he did to President Trump?
Yeah, we're going to go through it.
Okay.
I got so much to go through, but I want you to see this. This is real. Robert put this out there. So chief judge, and by the way, it's a chief judge. This is not just a basic judge. This is a chief judge, Brian. Blocked the deportation of Trinidad Agua gang members without disclosing the fact that his daughter worked for a 501c3 called Partners for Justice that gives legal advice. And let me guess who's funding the criminal enterprise, 501c3, the U.S. taxpayer. At this point, Chief Judge Boasberg is Partners for Justice should be arrested, not impeached. And while you're at it, arrest Judge Juan Merchant, Authentic Campaigns 2. So here's a video. I want to play this video. This is a video of these criminals down in Venezuela. Let's go ahead and play it.
Tattoos. These images released by El Salvador's government shows the transfer of about 2,000 inmates stripped to their shorts and with their heads shaved to what's been dubbed the country's new mega prison. It just opened. It's believed to be the largest prison in the Americas with a capacity for 40,000 people, and it's the latest step in a controversial crackdown on crime that's caused the country's prison population to soar. Human rights organizations have reported that innocent people have been caught up in the law enforcement campaign. That includes dozens, they say, who died in police custody. Last year, the country's president asked Congress for emergency powers to temporarily suspend some constitutional rights after a massive spike in murders attributed to gang crime. It includes that arrests can be made without a warrant and detainees no longer have a right to a lawyer. Private communications of all citizens can also be accessed by the government. Since then, about 64,000 suspects have been arrested. The murder reports fell about 57% last year.
Brian, El Salvador, by the way, El Salvador, not Venezuela. Apologies. And I should know better. Brian, these are violent criminals. And you have people that are standing up saying, well, you have to allow the violent criminals to have all sorts of rights in the United States while they were killing people. And they got shipped down to El Salvador and the judge blocks it. These are guys that are murdering people, not just there, but came here to do the same thing.
Well, and President Trump has now declared Trinidad a terrorist transcriminal organization, terrorist organization. And so being on U.S. soil as an illegal alien and also as a member of a criminal syndicate, you don't have the same rights that we have. No. And that's absurd. So the video you showed there, I believe that was Bukele when he originally went scorched earth in El Salvador in 2023. There's a strikingly similar video showing the plane loads that we've sent over there of the Trinidad Agua gangs. But, when you look at, and I hate saying this because I am a devout constitutionalist, but when you look at El Salvador and going from the most dangerous country in the Western Hemisphere with the highest murder rate to right now, the lowest murder rate in the Western Hemisphere, that's insane. And the idea that somebody would stop us from deporting criminal organizations, gang members that have been declared terrorist organizations that, you're out in Colorado. Well, you were out in Colorado, that are, taking over apartment buildings, that are pushing fentanyl out into the streets with, drugs laced with fentanyl. It's absurd to think that we're going to sit there and give all of these individuals the same due process, the same, so that they can get some, weaponized NGO lawfare attorney, some weaponized judge. And to Bukele's point, that was part of what Bukele said in El Salvador. And he told President Trump the same thing. He said, if you don't clean up your judiciary, you're never going to get anywhere. If you don't clean up the judiciary, you simply cannot fix your country.
And he wasn't wrong. He was not wrong. But Brian, here's my problem. Poor people in inner city, school to prison pipeline, we want to blame it on cops, put cameras on them, say that it's the cops doing it. It's not the cops doing it. It's a system that institutionally is designed to create a desert. And when you have that desert, people get desperate, they do things, they go in front of a judge, and the judge uses them as a token to put into a prison system that's privatized that allows for them to make money on it. I mean, it's a big circle that then leads back to the greed and institutional corruption we have in our government. But these judges act with impunity. They act with impunity, right? I have $1,000 a day I have to pay for not giving up a source when I'm covered by law by not having to give up a source. I mean, that's a real thing. And I don't care about me right now per se, but the fact is they get to make the rules, break the rules, stretch the rules, come up with whatever rulings they want. And the only thing you can do is burn every part of your entire inheritance or any wealth that you have, and they get to act with impunity. Even when they're found, even if you did all of that, and they're found to be wrong, there's not one consequence that they pay for it. They're allowed to get away with it. It's an institution of corruption and enslavement.
Yeah, you're spot on. What came to mind when you were saying that about them never having any accountability is the Fannie Willis decision that just came down with Ashley Merchant, where you read the headline, it's like Fannie Willis has to pay $54,000. Fannie Willis ain't paying $54,000. The taxpayers in Fulton County are paying $54,000. Fannie Willis is not going to do anything. She's not going to. A dime is not a dime is going to come out of her pocket. And that's another problem right there is you and me, they'll bleed us dry.
Yes.
Over a case. They will take every dime they can from us in hopes, and you talk about the school to prison pipeline, in hopes that we take a plea deal, #J6. They hope that we'll take a plea deal, go in their prison system, make, these privatized prisons money off of the, our labor, off the backs of us and the government as well. And in reality, if the other side ends up defeated, in the case of Fannie Willis here, there's no repercussions. She's going to run for election again with rigged and fake elections in Georgia and Fulton County. She'll probably win there. Hell, she'll probably end up being, I don't know, as a state legislator or the attorney general or something in Georgia. And there's no accountability. So that's spot on.
This leads me down to a different issue that we're going to have to cover. And I'm not going to cover it right now because I want to talk about this judge specifically. But I wrote that bluff. Bottom line, upfront analysis, 7 pages. I should probably pass it on to you. And it basically is an analysis, 7 pages. This is what we have to do in the first 90 days. You have to get rid of machines. You have to get rid of mail-in ballots. You can relent and say that you can have extended periods of time. I wrote the entire analysis of how President Trump could issue executive orders that allowed for him to strip out the ability for states to use machines or mail-in ballots as long as there's a mechanism that replaces it. Well, the emergency mechanism has always been paper ballots in person anyway. Make them have an ID based on transparency and security. But Brian, we're 60 days in. We don't have that done yet, right? That hasn't been done yet. And I know that they've read it because, that one of the ex-Secretary of State, Deputy Secretary of States is the one that said, hey, write this up. I wrote it up, gave it to him. So I know President Trump's seen it, but there's just so much happening. If we don't get rid of it, Fannie Willis's all over the country are going to get in. And 2026 is going to be a bloodbath for us.
I'm trying to be more optimistic in that regard. I do think we're going to get an expose on the 2020 election. I do think we're going to have a lot of stuff uncovered. I think that, with everything we've seen so far with Doge, I just have to believe that this has all been strategized. This has been game theoried. This has all been played out over and over again in simulations. And what's that,
bro?
You're not as optimistic?
I was there in 2020. 2021, Apollo. Did they have a plan in 2020?
If they had a plan back then, it did not make me feel good because it certainly looked like a bunch of clowns, man. It was bad.
It was.
Wait, but you mean a plan for 2020?
No, I'm talking about after 2020, like going into December, January, and I don't think they were clowns. I think Apollo was just frustrated on that. I think they just did.
I'm super frustrated.
It didn't have a plan. Brian, I walked in with an analysis, a model. I didn't have access to anything. I didn't have Mesa County. I didn't have Antrim County. That we only had a primary report for that. We didn't even have version 2 of that. We didn't have what happened in Arizona. We didn't have Nevada. We didn't have any of this information. We had none of it. None of it. I put a report and I was like, this is how they stole the election. Here are the 6 ways you have vulnerabilities. Here's how they did it. 2 points of it. I met with Secretary of State's counsel. Pompeo literally snuck out the back door. Right? This is a real thing. And January 6 happened. Comes to find out that they had video of, Antifa guys talking about the fact they were going to plan this insurrection. They were doing it months before the election. So they knew they actually created this narrative long before. They planned. They war gamed stealing the election and being able to withstand it for 4 years. All the evidence, right? And you how much evidence have you put out?
A lot.
You've forgotten about more evidence than you could even state today. I could bring up stuff that you brought up in articles that you wrote years ago, and it got swept. Nobody did anything with it. And they're like, well, they would arrest people if that was the case. No, they wouldn't, because the narrative is so strong for misinformation, disinformation, misinformation, disinformation. We're just a bunch of nuts. We're just a bunch of conspiracy theorists. So I don't think they have a plan. I think that you're in a better position, and I'm not trying to blackpill you. I'm not trying to throw salt in your eyes. Although I feel like I'm doing that right now. But I just want you to know that this is why it's very important for us to say, this is what has to happen. Here's the institutional knowledge for that. Here's some stuff that'll help you make a decision, because keep in mind, the same thing that you just said, he still has people on the mutinous boat, right? Behind him. And some of them are standing next to him. Still, they still got through. And a few I want to say, but I'm not going to, right? So we know that to be a fact. So if that's the case, man, how do we contribute? And I need to get back to the judge, because I really there's a whole thing about the FISA court. There's a whole thing about, the FBI lawyer, what he did to the provocateur Ray Epps. It's amazing how easy it is to see how corrupt this piece of trash is.
Well, so just to your point that you were making earlier, and I agree with you that nothing was done, following the election, but in 2020. But really, what did we expect? Following January 6th, right? The Fedsurrection, the so violent protest that they used to basically push Joe Biden through without anybody challenging it, or you were an insurrectionist and seditious if you tried to challenge it from that point on. When they pulled that operation off, I think that's kind of when any ability to effectuate an investigation kind of went by the wayside. And so we've dealt with the last 4 years of just absolute tyranny, going after moms and school boards and going after, heterosexual women in sports and men in sports, and just all the crap that we've seen over the last 4 years. And what did that result in? It resulted in the mandate that Donald Trump is facing right now. He has the wind at his back right now. And my point to what I was saying earlier, and one of the key things from a couple weeks ago that I saw was the Sean Spicer lawsuit. Did you see that article?
I did.
Okay, so I think Blaze put it out. To me, Stephen Miller going to Sean Spicer and saying, we need to do this because we might need this. We might need this in the future, tells me that Miller was aware that there was a plan. And that plan was going to be to clean house, and they needed precedent laid out there before a district court in D.C., before the appeals court in D.C., so that when Donald Trump came in there and cleaned house, he had precedent to justify what he was doing. Now, keep in mind, the courts are still ignoring that precedent with the Meritorious Service Board, the Merit Service Protection Board. There was a couple other boards, that he's fired that they're up in arms about. But I do still believe, Joe, and I look, I could be wrong on this, and this is a lot of hopium, but I'm going to give the alternative to the black pill on this. I believe that we are going to get in a 2020 election expose sometime just before the year 2026, not the midterm election, but before the year 2026, as the primaries are kicking off. I think that there is an emergency plan that they will have in place to go to hand-marked paper ballots, counted at the precinct level, for at the very least federal elections. I think that's within his authority to do. And I think we're going to get it. And then I believe, this is, again, my opinion, and I'm totally speculating here, but if we have free and fair elections, I think there's no question that we take a supermajority in the Senate. Yeah. And once we have that supermajority, we can really get down to brass tacks and effectuate some change. We can change, election systems. We can change. There's all sorts of things that we'll be able to do with a supermajority. We'll be able to impeach and remove these rogue, weaponized judges. And and that's when I think once we have that supermajority, that's when I think all these investigations come crashing down. And that's when we start getting the perp walks. That's when we start holding people accountable. And it's because we will have not just the political mandate, the people's mandate, but we also don't have to worry about the political fallout of perp walking people before a midterm election, when the Democrats and the mainstream media will say, hey, look what they're doing. They're doing exactly what we said they're going to do. We got to get Democrats in before a midterm election. Sorry. And that's just my opinion right now. If they start arresting Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell and, all these people that have committed heinous crimes against the American people, if they start doing that right now, CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times, they'll never let him live that down. And all the momentum that Donald Trump has gained over the last 4 years of an atrocious Biden administration go by the wayside. I think this is very strategic. I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. So,
look, I hope you're right. But from a mathematical standpoint, I look at what's happening right now, and I look at the number of holes that they're putting in the boat. At the same time, the President Trump is sealing up parts of the boat, and he's throwing out mutinous people overboard. They're digging more holes, and again, we get back to this judge and the lack of accountability, and that's really all I look at, Ryan. That's really what I look at. I look at the reality, like what is happening that shows a systematic approach to accountability. Just anything, anybody getting arrested, and they don't have to be arrested, right? They just anyone being held accountable for bad behavior, anyone, and it isn't there. You get rid of Samantha Power over at USAID. They sue. You have the AFL sues. We have all this stuff that keeps happening where they slow down the machine, and they do it on purpose. And then on top of that, 442nd Regiment, the Japanese American deal, they had two contractors that literally removed, stripped out people that have done great things for our country, that fought for our nation in World War II, World War I, Vietnam War, things like that were given the Congressional Medal of Honor, other awards, and that somebody went in and sabotaged all these and then reported to the media that, oh, by the way, President Trump is, anybody of a citizen of color that got an award over the last 60 years, he's purging the doctrine, but it's not true. It was being done by saboteurs, which is eroding our confidence in the base. So what they're doing is they're actually starting at the bottom, creating all these stories while we're working up here on this. And because these leftists are allowed to stand on the sideline while the strategies are baking, they're allowed to stand close. It's like the fire's not hot enough, Brian. And it's not hot enough because people are not panicking. And if you want to make people panic on the left, you want to see the devil panic, you got to arrest people. You got to arrest a lot of people. You got to start showing us the fire so that they're not standing on the sideline going, okay, They're going after Act Blue. Okay, let's move over here. Let's take this. Let's move this over here. Move this over here. This organization. Let's get budgets here. They're constantly moving chess pieces on the table, and they can do so very clearly and without even being seen because they can see it happening in real time. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I mean, there are some pretty imperative steps that President Trump has taken already. Rescinding the clearances of Perkins Coie, the 50 other law firms, which he hasn't even named those yet, as far as I know. Burling and Covington, the 51 Intel and John Bolton. There is a plethora of other people, by the way, not just the 51 spies. Bunch of former Obama simps had their clearances removed. That is a massive and decisive victory against the lawfare state. Now, is it? Did we win the war? No, absolutely not. We still got a long way to go. But these are big moves that President Trump is taking. And to be honest, like, they've challenged the authority of the president to keep him out of federal buildings and stop contracts, but they haven't challenged the clearances. And nobody's going to want to deal with a law firm, working in government that doesn't have, clearances. And so, these are big, haymakers that he's throwing right now, and they're landing. And we just got to keep them back on their toes, on their heels.
It's we talk about Mark Elias, right? I mean, here's a guy that I'd love to see in handcuffs. I mean, he's a provocateur all over the country. He's involved in a lot of different lawsuits and heavily funded. So it'd be nice to see that happen. And Brian, look, I'm not going to argue with you that you're. I mean, if I was looking at it from a hopeful standpoint, I always like to look at it from a very pessimistically optimistic standpoint. I know that they're going to get stuff done, but I'm laser focused on the things that I know that if they did, it would at least give us a better chance of getting better people into office that are not a part of the selected, even on the Republican side, selected rather than elected part of this. I do want to go. I know you. I only got you for 15 to 20 minutes. Boasberg. Well, I want to show you this because James Boasberg is an ally of the SSCI. Several cases have brought sunlight on the corrupt DC system. This is an actual dossier that goes through a long history of corruption, and each of the Boasberg ruled in favor of maintaining the corruption, including his woefully blind support of the FBI searching NSA databases to conduct illegal surveillance of Americans. Same judge who sat as a presiding judge on the FISA court, the same judge who gave FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsman a slap on the wrist for manufacturing evidence used in the Carter Page FISA application that defrauded the court, the same judge who appointed the former DOJ NSD head, Marion McCord, as amicus curiae advisor to the court after she knowingly and fraudulently submitted the FISA application to the court. Same judge that gave FBI provocateur Ray Epps a sentence of probation. Bro, he told people to go into the Capitol, was responsible for creating and provoking, and he got probation. Same judge who on his vacation went to sit in the DC courtroom to observe defendant President Trump, who was forced to appear in DC court. Same Boasberg who established a horrible precedent for forcing Vice President Mike Pence to testify before a grand jury about his conversations with Trump, breaking executive privileges. And this is what I talk about. I mean, I have sources, not just source, but sources that they're saying, Joe, you have to give up your sources or we're going to charge you $1,000 a day, even though I have a shield law in the state of Colorado that says I do not have to give up that at all. So this is one of the cases here where the FISA court is compromised and goes through and looks at the, which, by the way, I don't think there should be a FISA court. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
Not.
So, I mean, so how does a guy like this stay in as a judge? And he's a chief judge. He's a chief judge.
Well, to the point of the FISA court, I'm rereading actually right now Kash Patel's Government Gangsters book, and he talks a lot about the FISA court. And I learned quite a bit about the FISA court through his book, like the fact that the judges are on a three month rotation. I think it was a 3-month rotation. But they're on a rotation so that a lot of these cases that are brought before them, the case is dumped on them. So they have no idea the context of the case. They don't really know the historic, the history of the case. There's also no transcripts, which is absolutely absurd that you can have, your Fourth Amendment rights taken away from you, your Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment rights taken away from you by a court with absolutely no accountability to that court. And, case in point, Kevin Kleinsmith, literally faking an email to make it sound like Carter Page was not a CIA source when in fact he was a CIA source. And then the repercussions for that, 12 months probation, never lost his bar license.
Confirmed. CIA informant. Confirmed.
Right.
Not just speculative, not just we think this is the case. 100% confirmed.
And he manipulated that so that it justified the FISA warrant on him. And he kept his bar license. I mean, that is just absurd. And that's a testament. One of the stories that went really by the wayside when Doge was going through all the USAID stuff, or excuse me, not USAID, was when they uncovered the American Bar Association and the vast amount of money that they're shipping offshore. The fact that the ABA has, offices in Jordan and Syria and like just a list of countries. It's the American Bar Association. What in the hell are they doing in other countries? But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent there. But, going back to what you're saying about the FISA courts and this Boasberg judge, I think that the only thing left while the appeals process is going on is for President Trump to tell this judge to kick rocks.
Yeah, well, I mean,
come and get me.
Do you think he does it though? Do you think he tells him to kick rocks? Do you think that? I mean, I hope he does, and I think he will.
Based on Caroline Leavitt, based on her statement, I think he's going to. Did you read her statement on this? Yeah, I think he's going to. I think he's going to say, if anybody knows the system better than President Trump, nobody knows the system better than President Trump after the last 5 years of lawfare that's been waged against him. And, I don't know how they're going to go about doing this. But again, what is this judge going to do if Trump says, piss off, I'm not following this order? I don't know. I don't know, man. These are unprecedented times. If you look, I think it was, and believe it or not, I think it was Lincoln that told Justice Roger Taney in, prior to the Civil War, when Lincoln suspended habeas corpus and the judge says, you don't have the authority to do that. And Lincoln said, watch me. And he did it. And it was never, Taney never did anything. The Supreme Court never did anything to stop him. So, I mean, maybe that's the precedent that President Trump is gonna look to. He's a huge fan of Lincoln, so that's where we go.
So this is where we get into really deep waters, right? Because I do want to talk about his daughters, and obviously there's so much information. JC, make sure all the information that you uncovered on Boasberg gets out. I want everybody to see it. Every article. Build a large thread, if you would, and just go through the thread on all of the socials, Untamed and on mine as well. And put it on True Social. Sorry. But the precedent's there, Brian, that there's no accountability, that a judge can act with impunity. The precedent is not there to arrest judges for crimes. It's just not there, right? It doesn't exist. But if you want to shake the tree, if you want to shake the tree of liberty without bloodshed, you massively disrupt what already exists. Like you know that these are corrupt. You arrest them based upon what it looks like on its face. Boasberg should be in prison. Boasberg should be arrested. Chief judge arrested for corruption, for a RICO violation, and just start arresting every one of them that are connected. Just arrest them all. And worry about how it shakes out as you start to build cases in non-jurisdictive environments. In other words, make sure he gets arrested in the Virginia court. It's like the Maryland judge, right? Find a way to actually put it into a competent jurisdiction and make sure that you have good people, good DOJ attorneys that are making sure that we're not compromising the jury pool like they did in DC. It was used over and over and over again. But if we don't start recognizing, this is again recognizing the fact that the game is rigged. No matter what we say, the game is rigged. They have the ability and they have the upper hand because they will do whatever they want. Look what they did on January. They will do whatever they want. There is no limit that the left will not take. There's no limit. I mean, they persecuted and abused J6ers. One being raped. A J6er was raped. So it's
several were.
So at some point, don't we have to say, all right, gloves off, we're done. And just forget it. We don't care about the consequences. You haven't had a consequence against a judge yet. Not one.
I'm with you, man. I'm really with you. Unfortunately, I think once it gets to that point, it's almost the point of no return. But do we need to get to the point of no return? Do we need to cross that line? And if when all of this is being exposed, all the corruption that's being exposed, the fraud, waste, and abuse by Doge, and then you have judiciaries come in and say, no, this is fine, continue on. You don't have the authority to do this. You're exactly right. Eventually, you get to that line, and you got to cross it at some point. So I think it'll happen.
Yeah, I mean, I hope anyway. And here's Bad Kitty put this thing out about go all the way down to 9 if you would. The Boasberg twins, Melissa and Margaret, are both the twin sisters of Judge James Boasberg. Both of the gals linked to the far left organization and deep state out of the wazoo. Melissa worked with Susan Rice's brother, Brian. Susan Rice is the most evil person I've ever been that I could ever utter the name of. Worst human being in the world.
I concur.
The things that I know are just, and this is, man.
How does this guy not recuse himself? It's not just his sisters. It's his daughter. Is it his daughter? Because Loomer exposed that. I mean, it's
a cabal. It's organized crime, Brian. It's organized crime. Like, we are dealing with the deepest, darkest organized crime in the world. Like, this is worse than the Gambinos and the Smaldones. This is worse than any of it. As a matter of fact, Pelosi, her whole family comes from organized crime. This is organized crime to a level that now they're able to systematically do whatever they want to anyone in this country, and they can just push a button, call someone on the phone, go over here, have a person arrested. You could be arrested for anything out there. And frankly, they like to torture people. And yet nothing has been done to these people. Nothing.
Well, again, going back to one of the first points I made, this is where I think Utah versus the United States comes into play here. And at some point, the Supreme Court needs to say enough. You've got more lawsuits, double the amount of lawsuits against Donald Trump in the same time period than any other president in U.S. history. At some point, the Supreme Court needs to inject itself and say, hey, enough of this. If you're bringing a case against the federal government, you bring it in our court, and that's that. And is the Supreme Court compromised? I mean, probably. Is it easier to compromise a single district court judge than it is to compromise 9 individuals on the Supreme Court? Absolutely. So at some point, they have to step in if they're going to stop, that line we were talking about earlier. If they're going to stop that line from being crossed, they have to inject themselves here.
I agree. What gets worse on? All right, so I'm gonna give you the last few minutes because there's more stuff that I want to go through, but it's obvious that we can sit here and work the problem. Matter of fact, I don't even know why President Trump just doesn't bring him on. We'll figure it out. I'll just put a bunch of people in cuffs, and you can push all the cases over the Supreme Court, and then stand over Amy Barrett like this. You better do the right thing.
Yeah, I was talking about this morning on my news program and with my co-host, and he said some of these judges are probably, obviously there's a lot of corrupt judges, but some of these judges are probably compromised by other things, whether it's cartel money, threats against their family, their lives, whatever it may be. And immediately I flashed back. Do you remember I think it was in 2020, the federal judge whose son opened the front door to a FedEx delivery man and was assassinated? Yep. That's a very, very straightforward, direct threat. And I'm sure there was some signaling that went on with that to other judges that, hey, this could be you. And that's the only explanation I can think. Boasberg obviously just has a long list of corruption, a long list of questionable rulings, questionable, going back to the Kleinsmith thing. So yeah, fair enough there. But, there's other judges out there that, you look at them and there really isn't anything on the surface that you can grasp at that would justify such a ridiculous ruling. So you have to wonder, are these people actually being compromised in ways that, Epstein, right? Is there blackmail on these people? Is there threats being made against their family? Whatever it is, this is just absolutely absurd how these guys are trying to exert more influence from the judiciary than the executive. The elected leader of this country, the leader of the free world, can't do his job because a bunch of, I hate saying them. I don't want to call them bureaucrats because they're technically, the heads of the judicial branch. But I don't know, man. I'm getting a little black-pilled on this.
Yeah. I mean, this is where, look, and I'm not black-pilled from a standpoint that I don't think we can solve the problem. But I'm looking at it from the perspective of, if you want to push the devil back into a hole, you've never seen the devil go back into the hole and say, okay, you caught me. It's always taken force. And I think that there are people around President Trump who are Manchurian in nature. They're sleeper cells. And they're saying, you want to be a good person. They're whispering in his ear, and they're whispering in other people's ears. You can hear it in what Dan Scavino says. Dan Scavino says, he says, we just have to get to the point where we rip Band-Aids off, right?
Yes.
Put these people in cuffs. And he's a guy that is well respected and well liked by President Trump, who is constantly signaling. And you have same with Liz Harrington, saying she's signaling that we've got to get to it. But people inside of his cabinet are relenting to this idea that, hey, slow it down. Brian, if we continue to slow it down, we will symptom problem. We will concentrate on the symptoms, never get to the problem, and we'll be right back in the same boat a couple of years from now, and it's going to lead to the death and destruction of our nation.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment right there. I think that what we're doing right now, cutting off a lot of the finances for, the quote unquote deep state, the establishment, whatever you want to call it, is a significant move here. But, it's always darkest before the dawn, right? And I think we very well could be getting to that point where it's going to get much worse before it gets much, much better. And I'm just, praying, and I'm trying to remain optimistic that is, what we're up against. Nobody knows what we're up against better than President Trump, because he's lived it to the fullest extent over the last 5 years, 6 years, and even going back to his first term. So, I've got to be cautiously optimistic, Joe, that we are on the right track, and that there's things going on that will get the mission accomplished.
Yeah, I think you're right. Brian, how do people follow you so they can follow you? I'll stay on for a little bit longer, go through a couple other things with everyone, but how do they follow you? And yeah.
Sure. You can follow me at Canncon Actual on Twitter, at Canncon on Truth Social, my own platform, rumble.com/Canncon, the Gateway Pundit under Brian Lupo. I've got a show over on Badlands as well, so you guys can follow me in any of those places. And I try to engage with everybody. And yeah, it's always an honor to come on with you, Joe. Haven't been in a while, dude.
No, you haven't. I do read all your articles. I will tell everyone that the way that Brian thinks about things, I know that he's got to take a deep breath and step away for a minute sometimes, because some of the times I read your articles and I can feel the not I wouldn't say call it anger. I would say the anxiety towards people understanding that truth comes out very, very well in your writing. So well done. Well done.
Thank you very much. You'll have to get me back on to talk about this Georgia series. I just put part 1 out today, so check that out on Gateway Pundit, part 1, talking about the House Bill 974 and the utter corruption of hiring an auditor who is connected to the Center for Internet Security and was part of the entire censorship regime in 2020, is now the person that is using computer technology to audit your votes without any human interaction. You got to check it out. It's going to be a fascinating series.
So I want to get you on that. If we can break the series down into 1 hour segments, I don't even have to talk. I'll just let you do it, and you can bring all the stuff, and then we'll get it on the BEK network too, which reaches about 30 to 40,000 people a day. And so and that's a network in the Midwest. So it'd be a good it's basically a broadcast network, right? Like cable network. So we can get it on there as well, but we'll break it down and I'll have Mermaid reach out to you.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. God bless.
God bless you, brother. Man, the one thing I say about Canncon is that he just brings I could see that as he's sitting there talking to me, he's going, man, I want to stay white pilled. I want to stay red pilled. Okay, I'm getting a little black pilled. But it's hard not to get to that place, because as you work the problem, you start seeing it from different angles and seeing as if we're maybe not going through the steps where we're war gaming or war rooming things. And there's a lot of tight to vest, which if I were President Trump, I'd be tight to vest right now too, because what happened in the first 4 years is that everyone leaked everything. And now President Trump has made it clear, if you leak something, you're out. And so there's this tight-lipped environment. The bad part about that is that I've had conversations about things like Tina Peters and others where people are taking permissions and saying, oh, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. I call it the Sharona Bishop formula, right? That you have this person that, frankly, everything she touches turned to trash. She was the first one to bring in a federal CI and Conan Hayes, validated Dennis Montgomery, some really bad people that have done really bad things to our country, causing a lot of chaos. And so by having this tight lips, you're allowed to just talk and say things and take permissions that you don't have. And that becomes one of the big dangers. And Apollo, we were talking about this last night, about Tina specifically, and kind of what has been said about Tina and these strategies that kind of work against the better interest of Tina. It really kind of a sad state of affairs, because she is, the lawyers have a strategy, the DOJ has a strategy related to creating accountability that goes in one direction, and you have people that build up this thing to say that that Tina is incapacitated that she's mentally declined, which is not the case.
Well, I think actually this connects in a couple of important ways. And it's one of the reasons I think the whole, look, just bring in the military. Bring him in, bring it down, arrest them all, blah, and all this like planned stuff that they ran the op on. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, there's some legitimate angles to that. And I think given, I'll just speak from my perspective, given what I've seen, there's definitely something going on like that. Now, do we know who is actually doing what and for what reason? No, not always. And it can get very confusing. And it's part of the reason that everyone is so frustrated. Like when you mentioned how I'm frustrated earlier, I'm frustrated for that. Because you have a lot of people going, it's all good, chill out, don't worry, we've got it all, you guys just keep on keeping on, and like there's no direction. And then there's a lot of hinting at like, oh, it's gonna come this time, and you still got the people saying, look, the arrests are coming. And it's really frustrating because there's a lot of people that do see the corruption and they get it, and then the line kind of is like, if you read between them, here's what they're telling you is everything's really bad and it's all really bad, and you guys all get it, wink wink, you understand, but you're not smart enough to actually see it roll out. So like the Q stuff, when it was coming out, there was that thing like 95% will have to be secret because it's too dark. So they're like pre-programming people that we're not going to show you shit and you're just going to trust us, and that's really dangerous. And so when we get to like now where we're at, where it's like bring out the arrests, there's like, here's the line that I straddle, and I think a lot of people probably struggle with, is we get it. We see like, cool, they're dismantling the money. If they had just come and ripped off the Band-Aid, the nation would have crumbled. And there would have been a lot of chaos that they could have done all kinds of things, run a new civil war, say, oh, look, Trump's a dictator. And they would have had enough cover because the fog of war was really strong. So like, not really a viable solution back then. Is it now? I don't really know. I'm going to try not to pretend that I'm the smartest guy in the world right now. But then you go to Tina Peters. And so this is kind of the whole deal. you have precedent, and that's what's really important. If they start moving things real fast, like we see with the Biden auto pen and a lot of these executive orders, it's been very clear and made very clear that precedent is really important. And I think that's most likely why a lot of these things are moving really slowly. And I do think there's some good things that are going to come, because if you're going to do it, dismantle anything, you have to do it right, because it doesn't end with Trump. Like, what comes after that? Otherwise, they set a precedent that they're just going to come and turn it around, even if this is well-intentioned. But then you have Tina, and they're using strategies that already have well-established legal precedents when you get someone declared mentally incompetent, which is basically what it looks like they're doing. And what happens then? You get them in
it's being
psych
done by
wards.
people on the outside. Being done by people on the outside.
It's reactionary. It's done by the outside. And what's going to happen if they follow through with that and that somehow gets legs to stand on and runs is she gets declared whatever. They're going to adjudicate something, get her tested. Then you go through a whole like power of attorney battle. And then what happens to Tina? Does she have her house? Does she have anything? Does she get to choose where she lives? How does that affect her being in jail? Like, you're going to get her declared mentally incompetent and then say, free her, give her back to us. It doesn't make sense. It's a stupid strategy. And again, we have like the same thing. I think you articulated well in a message. It's like, why are we trying to straddle the line of, no, she's innocent, she needs to be let out, this is corrupt. But then at the same time, no, she's just falling apart because, I guess Tina is just losing her mind and it's really hard in there. And they kind of like connect it to the fact that she's being targeted, but they don't say it outright. And they don't say that she shouldn't be in there in the first place. It's like it's schizophrenic. The whole idea is schizophrenic. And that's what I think a lot of the country is going through right now. That's what it feels like with the administration. Like, are we actually going to see some movement? Are we being patient because things need to be done right so that we don't set up our children for a dictatorship with the precedent that Trump sets in this administration? Or are we just, laughing at ourselves, thinking we're having a good time? Meanwhile, they're ushering in like the new AI revolution into the golden age. Like, that's the creepiest thing with this AI initiative, all these billions of dollars. And then we're going to all be free of like the boot on the neck kind of tyranny, but we're all locked into a soft, clean, technocratic state that you can't really fight against because it's too invested at that point. That's the thing. It's like we're walking into smart cities if we're not careful. We're walking into real, not undetectable, but like pretty well indefensible technocratic control and like very Orwellian types of systems if some things don't really change with the Trump administration or things don't turn out in our favor, and what we see at face value being promoted and like walked along is being brought to reality, or it's a very different story. So I mean, that's the line, and I think it's the same thing with Tina. It's like there's no actual forward movement. Like, true north doesn't exist here. Sorry for my rant.
Well, it doesn't exist, and I think that's what gets to the point where chaos favors the op, doesn't favor the people. And Apollo, it's not a rant because you're basically just drawing a line towards what we're actually dealing with on a daily basis. And people are, I had somebody that sent me a text just now. And he says, Joe, I'm sorry. I am very leery of folks, as they say. And so am I. I am. But I want to tell you that much of the reason why I'm leery of people and that finally have come out and said Sharona Bishop is absolutely bad. And I didn't before when I was with Mike Lindell's team, because my job at that moment was keep Mike out of trouble, solve problems for Mike Lindell, big problems. And my job wasn't to worry about Mike Lindell or worry about Sharona Bishop, but I could see her in the side making money, and she's burned pretty much everyone. She burned Lauren Boebert. She burned Tina Peters. She brought in feds. I mean, there's a reason why people don't deal with Sharona Bishop. She runs ops on people all the time. And what she's doing in Colorado is a direct correlation to the fact she doesn't even live in Colorado. She's trying to control a slate of people to run the Colorado GOP. She literally is trying to act like a mob boss because she's a Fed in Colorado. And when you look at not just the Sharona, but the other people that surround her and the things that Sharona Bishop has done and said, and I use that as an example, America's mom, right? The hairdresser. She's a hairdresser. That's it. I'm sorry. I don't think she's that. Is she a hairdresser or no, she's a makeup artist?
Makeup artist, yeah.
She's a makeup artist. So the makeup artist turned election expert turned strategist whose husband works for the feds, is a Fed, moves to Texas, still interferes with what happens in Colorado, surrounds herself with other people like this person. What is that woman's name? Debbie Perry Smith. That her who came in and basically tried to sabotage FEC United. So there's a group of them.
Yeah,
there's a group of these really bad people, Fed people, Fed. Let me say Fed meaning CIA, people that work under dark money, people that work under dark circumstance. That's what these people are. And they come in and say, we're here to help. They infiltrate things and then they create chaos. If you want to know what it looks like, it's that. That's when you know what you're dealing with, right? But Tina Peters specifically, when you create these, when you have conversations with the lawyers, you have conversations with it, you're trying to figure out what is north. What should we be concentrating on here? Same thing when you deal with President Trump, trying to figure out what's the next thing on the list. What's the priorities look like? Who can handle these priorities? And how do we get past it? He can't. Because every time he turns around, there's another judge standing in the way. Who's the one that stood in the way of the Coomer lawsuit with me? It was a judge named Marie Avery Moses, an Antifa judge that marched in the Antifa deal. Now you have a guy that's Antifa, Eric Coomer, who works with 50% of the voting of the American people, comes in. This judge replaces a judge that had been on the bench for 20 years that ruled against Eric Coomer, and Jared Polis comes in and replaces the judge, forces the judge out, and puts in this new judge, Marie Avery Moses, who, by the way, has no experience in anything other than family law and is a radical. I mean, as radical as you can get. Made a sign and marched in an Antifa rally that says, if it was my son or daughter, I would have burned the world down. That is the judge that was put on the case for Eric Coomer, okay? Fast forward. And by the way, set a precedent saying that I had a known falsity. Lied because of an ideologue, evil judge. Evil. And then charged me like $50,000 and in sanctions for not giving up my source, which I have a right to. I have a right to to keep a source safe. Fast forward to Tina Peters.
Can I pause you for 1 second? Just like real quick on that one statement you just made. They're trying to say known falsity.
Yeah.
Like they're dictating what fact is because they say they know enough to judge that. And then they're still trying to get you to give up the source.
Yeah.
That's schizophrenic.
It's not even just give up the source. There was no depositions. There was nothing. Just a judge that said, you got up there and you had to and they said, has people come to the house to kill Joe? And you're like, yes. Right?
Yeah, and I actually I was so pissed off at these shitbags. Pardon my French. I'll put $1 in the swear jar. But the guy was really irritated me, and he's like, "You feel safe in here?" And I was like, "No, I don't." I was like, it was a joke. I was like, I could have brought a weapon in if I'd wanted to. It's not that hard. And then he's like, "Oh, we have security here." And I'm like, yeah, you have security. You did a great job, because I was really mad. And then they go to the death stuff, and I was like, "Oh, you little a-holes," because they were trying to say that there was nothing that could have happened in that courtroom, and it's ridiculous. The entire fact that it was there is ridiculous.
But the fact that they manufactured it, they manufactured an outcome. They manufactured it. They manufactured every part of it. They manufactured it. They literally made it all up. The whole thing just made up a probable falsity. We're going to do, and the judge was an Antifa judge, a judge that literally marched in the Antifa rallies in June of 2020, who said that she would have burned the world down, is the judge that says that it's a probable falsity for me and never disclosed any of that. And then did a sua sponte ruling upon coming in that overruled a 20-year judge. And every attorney involved in this case has said the same thing. This judge is blatantly corrupt. Just getting on the bench, corrupt.
When again, you have the probable falsity while you are getting sued in a defamation case.
Yeah.
Defamation case. And they overlooked the actual falsity in all of Eric Coomer's statements in the depositions.
Didn't he say? He did say none of the Facebook posts or social posts were his, and he didn't have a Twitter account.
No, those posts weren't his.
Part of that is a lie. Every part of it is a lie.
Actual
Every part
falsities.
of what he said, actual falsities. But you can have this piece of shit run into a building. You have this piece of shit skinhead, drug addict who wrote about raping his wife. Eric Coomer wrote about raping his wife, making her bark like a dog and peeing on her. He wrote about that. Here's a guy that twice was arrested in California. By his own admission said, I would have served a long time in jail had I not had a good attorney. All of a sudden picked up for Sequoia voting systems. And he's just, he can run 50% of the vote of the American people. A self-proclaimed skinhead, a drug addict who lies with all he does is fucking lie. And that guy I picked out of a hat, 2,500 people. Lies in December, then sues me. Erases his entire social media platform, and then sues me. Erases evidence, and then sues me. And I'm the bad guy who has been slandered across every fucking social platform known to man, who has had all these radical leftists write all sorts of stuff about me. And look, I've never been a Satanist. I've never raped my wife of 23 years. I believe in Jesus. He has a Satan tattoo on his arm. And that's the guy. And the judge stands up for this guy and says, I had a probable falsity. And now I'm in another lawsuit for Clay Clark, and he sued everyone else around me for giving me the ability to talk. And he sued them for defamation. And he's been hiding evidence that I now have. And there's more evidence that's coming out of DC. And the Dominion lawsuit against Patrick Byrne. I don't even know how we got into this, but the fascinating part about all of this is that somewhere along the line, I'm supposed to do what exactly? I don't. It upsets me. Groomer Coomer. I agree.
It's the same thing with Tina. I mean, again,
but that's what I was getting.
It's the same thing.
And I think that's where I was going with this. I was going with this, that the fact that the judge in the case with Coomer, who has stood with these radical leftist demons, these pieces of shit who have destroyed the rule of law in our country, who have literally operated in a RICO Act and organized crime. That's what they've really done. They've done that. They've done all of that. And while you have people out there that are bad-mouthing me, the guy that literally I give more than almost everyone I know to help people in my community, have for a long time. And you have Tina Peters, Gold Star mom, lost her son. You had the DA get involved in her over 30-year marriage, went into the home that he was in and finished a divorce, created a divorce against Tina Peters so that they could literally attack Tina Peters. And somewhere along the line, that is acceptable. That's an acceptable thing to do. A woman that has been married to a man for over 30 years, you come in, you revive something, a separation that happened a decade earlier that was not even in play. And he, oh my gosh. And he dies because they load him up with fentanyl and all sorts of other morphine in a different state. They've attacked her home. They've attacked her. They attacked Belinda. They attacked and then I didn't even start talking about the two other people The brothers of the two other witnesses they charged in this case too, both mysteriously died. One in a hit and run, hit in the middle of the street, never caught that guy. And the other one murdered in a car accident. Both of them gone within a week of each other. And then right after that happened, all of a sudden they settle. Yeah, we'll settle. We want to settle.
Well, can I like real quickly address one of the accusations that was made against you recently?
Yeah, I didn't even. Is this the one I know about?
No, this was Sharona, and this is the one when everything you're talking about. You know what they're doing?
Yeah,
they isolated her. They isolated her through the legal process in the media, all of it. They did everything they could, including with her husband, to take away all of her resources and isolate her. You've been one of the only people who has still been supporting her, and I've seen that firsthand in the background. I've seen you give up time you really didn't have while you were trying to do favors and help out Mike Lindell and so many other people. And you were there making time for her, getting her on the show, staying over so that you could talk to her, doing it privately. And then they accused you and us of isolating her from everybody else. Like, I'm sorry, bitch. It's not a secret. This is the same person, because this one is just stuck in my head. She's saying that we're isolating. When asked repeatedly, she didn't even know how to get a hold of her.
No.
They asked, well, how do we write? She didn't know. Now, these people know. This isn't like us. We don't have the power to. So many.
I've helped so many people be able to talk to her and text back and forth with her. So many people. And here, I mean, I haven't even gotten to my point on this deal, and it's because you have shit people like Sharona Bishop. Yeah, there's total shit. She's not America's mom. She's the CIA's mom. That's what she is. Who Tina can't stand. Nobody's isolating Tina. I'm giving Tina a voice. She can speak anytime she wants. She could call me right now, and I would put her on right now and let her speak. Why? Because she should have the ability where she is to speak about what is happening to her. That should be what's happening. That should be what we do, is that we give a voice to the voiceless. And let me tell you who took away that voice. Judge Matthew Barrett. Same with Marie Avery Moses, the piece of shit attorney or judge in Colorado. The piece of trash Antifa judge. That Antifa piece of shit judge. There's no difference than Matthew Barrett, the judge in Mesa County, who said, by the pen, by your voice, you're a danger to society as I stack. Because, by the way, just so you know, had he not stacked it and said, you're going to serve these consecutively, the 9.5 years, she'd be eligible right now to get out in a halfway house. She could still fight everything, but she'd be eligible to get out right now. But he said, I'm going to make it consecutively because I want to punish you. And this judge, Matthew Barrett, this piece of trash Antifa dog shit judge, this no different than Boasberg or any of the others, this organized crime judge, this hired henchman, this disgusting evil devil. I don't have an opinion at all. That judge denied Tina the ability to have any defense. Every defense that she had, nope, you're not allowed to talk about that. Nope, you're not allowed to talk about that. You're not allowed to talk about what's in the report. This Antifa radical piece of shit judge, Matthew Barrett, said not only are you not allowed to have a defense, you're not allowed to talk about it. If you do, I'll hold you in contempt. You're not allowed to say anything. You're not allowed to say anything. Not only did he do that, but on top of doing all of that, he punished her in the most egregious way by every time that the defense tried to speak about Conan Hayes. A federal CI, confidential informant, said, hey, look, this is a federal informant. You will not talk about him, and referred to him as a surfer, not as a federal confidential informant that had worked for the CIA, whose dad worked for the CIA. He blocked the jury from knowing about that. That piece of shit, Matthew Barrett, the piece of shit judge. I tried to testify. Nope, I was stricken. Now, Mr. Altman is not allowed to testify. Other witnesses that are experts, stricken, not allowed to testify. And when I want to go back to the part about Sharona Bishop is the one that went and got Conan Hayes and a few other people, by the way, that I'm not going to talk about those people right now, but went and got these people, injected them in, and had this weak ass person named Jerry. Weak ass. He's weak. I was on the plane with him. He was like, "Oh, we're going to win. This is so great. It's so great to be pro America." Coming back from the symposium, only to have him turn on Tina Peters and lie out his fat little face. Yeah, Gerald Wood. Yeah, that guy who got on the stand and lied and was coached by the prosecutor, Dan Rubenstein, who went to meet with town council members and lied. And the only person he talked to in lying to the town council was Dominion Voting Systems about them stealing their own elections by Dominion Voting Systems. So it's like going to a murderer and saying, "Hey, can you do me a favor and just tell me, what's wrong with this?" And you look at the investigation into Tina Peters. The investigator at the AG's office in Colorado called up Matthew. I did a whole show on this. Called up Matt Crane and said, "Tell me how to debunk the reports. Tell me how to debunk the reports." They're all working together in order to persecute Tina Peters. And the same thing that you see happening with Bloomberg or Boasberg I haven't even gotten to the deviancy of Matthew Barrett, the judge in Mesa County. We are in a place right now that is, it's unbelievable that Tina's still in jail. And I know that they're working on things. I know the DOJ, man, I have absolute trust in Pam Bondi. And I know people have called me and said, "Joe, you can't trust Pam Bondi." And I'm like, you know what? Sit down. First of all, I'm going to trust the woman that knows how to keep herself looking like 30 when she's 60. Because that's freaking unbelievable. And it doesn't matter what side you look at. She looks like she's 30 years old. I don't mean left side. I mean, she wakes up in the morning, gets on TV, she looks 30. She goes and she prepares for a conference, she looks 30. She is a very well, I thought Paula, did I not think she was 30, 35?
Yeah, we talked about this when we
unbelievable
after she got confirmed.
And I'm faithful to my wife. I love my wife more than anything in the world, but Pam Bondi's a beautiful woman and she's really, really smart and she does not care. She will literally light things on fire. So I have absolute confidence in her. I'm also impatient. I'm impatient because fixing these problems are not that hard. I've been able to fix problems before. It's just not that hard. We can see the judges that are corrupt. We can see what they're doing. Start arresting them. Start on the state side. Start arresting by Matthew Barrett. Start arresting Dan Rubenstein. Start arresting Phil Weiser. Start arresting Jenna Griswold for leaking passwords. She leaked passwords. It's a violation of federal law. Just walk in there and put that girl in cuffs. I promise you she will sing like a bird. Sing like a bird. And if we do all of these things, and one of the things, by the way, that they're worried about in arresting these people, I already know. And by the way, if you arrest them and they go to a different court, competent court, that you know is not compromised, man, where do you find that? See what's happening? I was just thinking about this as I'm sitting here talking to you, Paula. Where do you find a court that's not compromised? Everywhere you turn. President Trump in New York, in D.C., J6ers in D.C., the judges in Colorado, the judges in Maryland that just ruled against USAID. I mean, it is corrupted to the core. And I think this is what they talked about when they said, we've got to capture, we have the most sophisticated election fraud unit when Biden said that in the world. I mean, it's going to take massive people being sent to Guantanamo Bay. I guess you could just consider these judges enemy combatants, get them to start speaking up. Right?
At some point, I don't think there's any way around that. I really don't. Like, if I'm being pessimistically optimistic, the slowdown is they're not wanting to set a dangerous precedent by having them, seize federal authority in the case and seize your jurisdiction. That's my hopeful guess. Is that's why it's taking so long. But I mean, at some point, there has to be that Band-Aid moment.
Bro, I don't think people on this thing understand just the massiveness of what we have been through, right? What we've seen. And I know that, and I'm going to do a quick little synopsis. Apollo, it was the 9th. I did the podcast. I did it under the moniker Joe Otto. I did it under Joe Otto because I had operated Conservative Daily for nearly a decade under Joe Otto as a pen name because I was a professional and I wanted to give people a voice. So I was the Marine that was stuck in Mexico. I was able to help get that person out by getting millions of people to go after Congress, send letters and phone calls there. I did I did crazy things over that 10 years, never took $1 from it, and just used it as an outlet so they could write. And I had a writer that wrote, Max McGuire wrote for about 6 years. And he did fairly well in writing content and looking at things like, how do we get rid of the Affordable Care Act and so on and so forth. So just did stuff and got the public involved in that stuff. But I did it under Joe Otto because I didn't really want to be known. I wanted them to look into it. I thought they could. I thought it'd be easy. And then a couple days after that, not even a couple of days, a couple of days after that, it was the 11th. The tall guy at the grocery store who said, "I'm going to kill you and your family," something to that effect. I don't even remember what he said, but it was shocking to me. I think I met you a couple of days after that or a day after that. It was that Thursday. Was it Thursday? We were at the place.
It was Thursday, and then I was at your place Monday.
Yeah, Thursday. And it was heating up. Let me just tell you something. It was heating up. I'm like, yeah, I don't think it's safe. And Apollo was my PSD. Well, there was actually 3. Matt and Micah had their own. And then you and another guy who ended up stealing $50,000 from me. That was weird.
That was weird.
Yeah. Who was also personal security detail who came in and someone to volunteer, ended up stealing from me, right? And then there was a third that came in and helped a little bit. But Apollo was my guy. Like he was with me. You were with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He'd sleep on Sundays. That was his day because I didn't go anywhere. Sundays I didn't go anywhere. Stayed there. So Apollo got to just decompress. You lived in my house for 18 months.
Yeah, every day.
So we got to know each other really, really well. I mean, really well. And in that 18 months, Apollo got to go to DC with me. When I went to different places, I would go to I go to speak somewhere.
And speak engagements, meetings.
And it was rough because everywhere we went, there was probably a threat 30 times.
Oh, yeah, it was constant. Yeah. And when it wasn't a threat, it was like someone driving by with a, DSLR. I mean, we couldn't get coffee.
You remember the CIA guy? Chuck Faddis.
Yeah. I remember Chuck.
Remember Chuck Faddis?
Oh, yeah.
And this is the guy that ran back. This is how I found out certain people were feds. Because he ran back and told those people, he's like, "Oh, yeah, no, I don't know." And then I found out he was dealing with people on the bad side. And I'm like, oh, shit. Right? Once you're CIA, you're always CIA. And he came in, he got frustrated because I was like, what the fuck? What? He kept looking across the room he brought in his boy or something.
There was guys sitting at the bar.
Yeah. And then we went to DC. I built the model. Then we went to DC. And we were in all sorts of rooms with Dr. Shiva. He was in one room. And then you had the NSA guys in the other room. And then I predicted the outcome of the election with my models. And I was on Freedom Plaza and told everyone, all the cameras went out. If you were to tell me that all of the things that would happen over those 4 years would happen, I would tell you that it's not even possible. It's not possible. Poisoned.
Yeah, I mean, thank God we were at the State Department that day. I mean, shit, man.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Man, there's so many.
And then like the sabotage of your companies too, even though I forget about that sometimes. Like that first month. That was like why we came back from DC early.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Oh, and then it was February, March 2022. It was, right? It was, yeah, March of 2022, the attacks on Ukraine. I get on and I say, I'm going to support Russia every day, twice on Sunday. Max McGuire loses his mind. Can't believe I'd ever stand on the side of Russia. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Right?
Yeah, you were being victimized by the Russian bot farms.
I mean, it was crazy because then they wrote all these articles, and everywhere you turn, they'd write a new article to defame me. They have spent 4.5 years defaming me. 4.5 years. In that 4.5 years, I have been utterly consistent. Albeit an asshole at times. Get it. I get it. But they literally tried to take my company from me. Then I had to resign. I can't even, you couldn't even believe it was a book. Apollo, I don't know. I look at it and go, this can't be real. I'm like, even can't be real. I've forgotten more about stuff than, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you say things and I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen. We did go through that. I'm like, oh yeah, Joe had to deal with that too. I mean, even right now, there's been a lot of changes this year so far that you've made in the companies. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think in a lot of ways, this is probably the best that things have been since this all started. And it's still kind of rough, but I mean, it's taken that long even to find solid ground again.
100%. And what's weird about all of it is that this has nothing to do with what we talked about with the judge, but is it all ties together. What they did to President Trump, what they've done to me, what they continue to do to me, what the judge Martinez is doing in the Clay Clark deal, where they're saying that we're going to ruin Mr. Altman. We're going to ruin him, and we're going to take away his rights under Colorado law, and we're going to make it up as we go along. And then what Charles Kane has done, and what Antifa, Eric Coomer has done, we're going to not say anything about that. We're going to create this chaos. We're going to create all this stuff. And I'm finally getting to the point where I'm slowing it down, and I'm starting to see it all. And Dave Clements was helping do some things for me on the legal side, and Apollo, he said, Joe, I read all of the transcripts. I've read all what the judges said. He goes, they're all working together. He goes, it's obvious. And then the mistakes that lawyers have made, that they almost made, they'd have to make on purpose. Like, how would you make these mistakes? But because there's so much chaos, you can't tell what is and isn't true or not true. It's complete. They have perfected the ability to be evil and to do and say whatever the hell they want to do when the facts in front of us show that these are demons, these are traitors, these are treasonous traitors. Eric Coomer is a treasonous little bitch-ass traitor, period, who works for a voting system company that is a bunch of bitch-asses that literally want to steal the voice of the American people. And they didn't just do it here, they did it all over the world. And yet we sit here and we have to capitulate to it. And I have to sit here and say, oh, you're defaming me. I'm defaming you? How do you defame someone that defames himself? Who puts a Church of Satan tattoo on their arm? Who pees on his wife and says, make her bark like a dog, and then puts that story out there to degrade his wife? Who goes in and runs into a building and then runs into a bar and drinks and then lies over and over and over and over again? And by the way, while all that's happening, how the hell do the attorneys for Coomer just show up? They just show up on the side of the road and negotiate with the police. It's like the Gambinos. It's unbelievable. Here, let me give you a little cash here. I don't want to arrest you for influencing a public official, which is a felony. Yeah, we don't want to do that. We want to hide. We want to be able to protect you, evil. It's crazy. All right, I'm done today.
Well, my last thing, just since you bring up the Coomer drunk incident again, when he's like, well, Google my name, he loses his mind. It's like, hey, bro, yeah, you must have it rough. Have you ever tried being Joe Altman? Because like the amount of media cover that fucker has gotten is wild.
Do you know how many times the police had to come to his house in Salida? Do you know how many times police had to come to his house? Do you know how many times the police were called to Eric Coomer's house in Salida, Colorado? Anyone want to guess how many times the police had to come there because of a threat? Guess how many times?
I'm going to guess 0.
0. Anybody want to guess how many times the police have had to come to my home over the first 3.5 to 4 years? Anybody want to guess? 21 times. 21 times, of which one person was arrested and put in jail at my home, where people ran away with guns, where I have to have bulletproof glass and thermal cameras, AR-15 next to the bed. I have to be careful where I go, how I go. I can't go outside without checking thermal cameras to make sure it's safe for me to go outside my own home. How many times again did Eric Coomer have that happen to him?
0.
But I'm the bad guy. Guy that, yeah, I mean, you just lie with impunity and put up stuff about killing cops and kill pigs and assassinate President Trump and do all these things. You can put up the Antifa manifesto, and this is the piece of shit that you will have the New York Times write an article about, that he's the perfect villain and talk about how he's revered. They revered this guy. Runs 50% of the vote of the American people, and he's revered for stealing elections, where they hide all the stuff that happens in Serbia, hide all the stuff inside the election system, where you should see some of the emails that state very clearly that Dominion was trying to circumvent the process by which elections were where they'd certify it. They just lie because they're liars. Okay, I'm done. Now I'm done. I was done before, but now I'm really done. All right. We got Wayne Allen Root. It's up right now. You can go watch. Good to see him. Paulo, I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done on my side. Man.
We had some fun.
Yeah, we did. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun. Everyone needs to support Tina at tinapeters.us. Tinapeters.us. Do not give 1 cent dollar to anyone else. If you have a recurring amount that you send in for anything, go to tinapeters.us. You can give a recurring thing on the, it's a Give, Send, Go that's on there that connects it to it. You can go there and actually support Tina Peters. There are others. There are others that are going to need our support. And I just want to, I'm going to pray us out, but I want to pray us out under the understanding. And I know I cussed a lot today. You guys you're my therapy. So you guys can all send me a bill. Because I laid on your couch and told you, I laid on your couch and you got to be my therapy today. You got to be my therapy, and I want to thank you for being my therapy and for having grace on me, because I love Jesus, and I don't even know why I care. I don't even know why I care about so many people. I don't even know why I spend so much time caring about people. I wish it was an affliction that I didn't have, but I do. And so, Apollo, thank you. Thank you for just, thanks for being my friend. Thanks for being there and keeping my family safe, and for just protecting my family. Thank you. Shout out to Jared for all the work you've done for Tina. Barbara, for all the work you've done. JC, you're just a lifesaver. Cindy, I know you're in the office now. I want to go down the line here really quick. And Joe Hoff, work you've done. Dave Clements, man, I'm grateful for you. Damon, for making sure you get everything done. For the people that give me encouragement. Jake, Fredo, Freyo, Fed Boy, thank you. Lynn, for taking care of all my work and keeping me upright. Mermaid, for making sure that I stay completely focused on what I need to focus on. And for all of you, for the prayers, for the time that you've spent serving over the last 4 years. I thank you. Okay, let's pray it out. Did I miss anyone? Better not have. Chris? Oh my God, I forgot about Chris. Chris, for all the work you've done, especially making sure Wayne Allen Root stays upright. Learn that system, buddy. Yeah. And then the people that are still in my company have done great things. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's pray. Father God, thank you for grace. Thank you for the healing that you've allowed me to go through at the same time that I'm taking wounds. Thank you, Father, for my friends and family. Thank you for my wife. Thank you for my children. Thank you for even my brother-in-law. Thank you for Apollo, Jared, for so many who have walked shoulder to shoulder. Thank you, Father, for the people that are listening. Thank you for the ambassadors of truth that have fought through the last 4 years. Thank you for President Trump. Thank you for Pam Bondi. Thank you for Aaron Clements, for Patrick Byrne, and so many people who continue to fight. Thank you, Father, for giving us a path of restoration. We don't talk enough about that. And thank you for saving us on November 6th of last year. All glory goes to you, Father, and without you, we would have none of this. So, Father, as you press forward and as we press forward, I don't want to ask for bold blessings. I just want to ask that you please protect those people who are doing good, exposing all of the bad that could be done to us and pushing us to a place where we can hold them accountable. I ask you, Father, that the pressures and the pain on the American people and on people around the world can be released. We can get to a place where we can have a better societal framework. It allows for us to have opportunity to teach our children, grandchildren about you. Father, there are people that are suffering with dysphoria. They want to change who they are, so they decide I'm going to change genders. And so I ask you, Father, to be on their heart and to not let the devil fool them into something that he cannot resolve. Father, I just ask you to help those people that are in a bad place. You may heal them, may heal their hearts, may give them the fire of your spirit inside of them so that they may operate in a place that is righteous. Father, I thank you again for all that we have. And I just ask you to guide us through a place where we can have prosperity into the future and may break the bondage of the slavery we feel, not just in this country, but around the world. I ask these things, Father, humbly in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, I'll see you guys on tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow, bright and early. God bless you. Remember, hit the share button, hit the little up button on Rumble. We got a bunch of things that we got done on, what is it? Not the up button, the little thumbs up button on Rumble. Also, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and more. If you're on the BEK network, if you're on one of the radio stations, just want to say thank you for all of your support. I want to thank you for the work you've done, and I want to thank you for not just the work you've done in listening to what we're talking about, but in actually getting out there and being ambassadors of truth. It's because you that we won. And Susan Rice, I see you, the good Susan Rice. God bless you. We'll see you soon. All right. God bless you all.